if I were speaking to a young person, and when I do speak to students, I like to remind them that whatever industry they may be interested in, there's a need for CPAs. So right. I'm told of countless stories of, being able to have impact, whether it's working with a startup, venture capital, in entertainment, gaming, all of those industries that we talked about, where there's still a need for CPAs. And not only that, accounting provides the language, right, of business that would be very helpful in any business endeavor, whether you want to aspire to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur or something in between.
Welcome to Paychex THRIVE, a business podcast where you'll hear timely insights to help you navigate marketplace dynamics and propel your business forward. Here's your host, Gene Marks.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Paychex THRIVE podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Gene Marks. Before we get started, just want to give you a little bit of a pitch for our THRIVE newsletter. There's all sorts of insightful articles and compliance updates and, mentions of this podcast and webinars that Paychex is up to. Really, really good stuff that'll keep you up to date, help you run your business, not just from an HR standpoint, but also from a business standpoint as well. So, if you'd like to subscribe, please join us. We're at paychex.com/thrive, paychex.com/thrive. Anyway, let's get to the topic at hand. Accounting stuff. And we are talking today to Aiysha Johnson, otherwise known as AJ, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the New Jersey Society of CPAs. AJ, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. First of all, that studio behind you is, I don't know if you notice, I do the AJs CPAs, once a quarter. We do like a video thing on their sort of town hall, and they have a whole setup down, in New York City. But man, your studio looks amazing. Like, how long have you guys had that?
Few years now, so it's actually a part of our overall space. So we're really excited to have the studio, and we're able to do a lot, including our Issues Watch and other, podcasts. It really allows us to be cutting edge, if you will.
Yeah, it's really amazing how many organizations nowadays that are trying to create content and get media out there. They're investing in quality studios. I mean, this cannot look like an episode of Wayne's World. You know what I mean? So it's got to look good. And that does take an investment, but it does pay off,
Yes.
Yeah,
it allows us to reach our members for sure.
It really does, in a very, very professional way. So, all right. So AJ, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself. You have been CEO now of the New Jersey Society. Since when and how did you get there? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So it will almost be a year. June will be one year since I've been in the role. And I have been serving the accounting profession for 5 years, going on 6 now. And I was at a global accounting association where we served independent CPA firms and advisory firms. So that was at BKR International out of New York, and I ran the executive office, which manages all of the worldwide activities from accounting to membership, IT, internal services, you name it, and membership. But I also was the executive director for the Americas region, overseeing all of the operational member-related type service questions, supporting all of the managing partners and their firms throughout the Americas region, which included Canada, the U.S., and Latin firms and firms throughout the Caribbean.
Wow, that's amazing. Is this your first time sort of in the nonprofit world? I mean, was the association you were working with?
No, I come with the background of more than 20 years experience in association. So I've done the whole gamut from running the marketing department to education, working closely with our partners and looking at opportunities there. So I've had the opportunity to touch every area within associations prior to my work at BKR and now at NJCPA.
That's great. You're the CEO. Some, associations and chapters, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They have executive directors. Is there a difference between a CEO and an executive director? Is it just a director? Is it just a title?
Well, at NJCPA, I'm actually the CEO and executive director. I know that at some state societies, they may be referred to as just the CEO or just the executive director. At times, they're also the president and CEO. So it just depends on the organization and the history and how they define that role. For us, we have a president that comes in annually. So that's our history and how part of our governance structure.
And the president that comes in, is that an employee of the society, or is that somebody that's in the profession?
They're in the profession, they're a member, and, they've been voted, if you will, into the role and supported by our board of trustees. So there's a whole process around nominations and thinking about who would be the best leader to serve as president in any given year.
And how long is the term for that unlucky individual?
In the president role, it's 1 year, but then but prior to that, they serve as vice president and then immediate past president. So consider it 3 years.
Okay. All right. I got you. How big an organization is the NJCPA?
So internally, there are 30 internally. And then for members, we have more than 13,000 members. So that gives you a sense of, NJCPA and what we're trying to do and our reach, right?
Yeah, it is certainly a big job. And as CEO and executive director, is your primary role fundraising? Is that what you're supposed to be spending most of your time doing, as well as running the organization? Tell me what your role is. So
I would describe my role in 3 ways. One is amplifying our brand for CPAs, but also anyone in the accounting profession, and serving as an ambassador there. So I meet with key stakeholders, which may include at any given time a number of state officials, but then also our educators, our partners as well, to be able to reach students. And I'll talk about that later because I know that you're interested in some of the pipeline efforts within the profession. And then also from an internal perspective, looking at how we're organized to best serve members. So part of that is just ensuring a positive member experience. And that may involve, looking at our systems and making sure that we can answer the right questions internally. But essentially, we're here, for our members. And then the other aspect of, broad aspect of my position and my role would be to support the sustaining of the market share and to look at ways to ensure growth as part of the strategic, efforts of the board and making sure that all of that aligns on a day-to-day basis. So sure, not so much the fundraising. We do have a scholarship
Right.
and an education fund, if you will. We're a 501c6, and the other nonprofit entities for the scholarship and education fund, that's all C3 organizations.
I got it now. So really, I mean, you've got an organization that you've got to manage their operations. You are responsible for growth and existing and new revenue streams, but you've got an organization that I'm assuming you have a certain percentage of your revenue comes from member dues. I mean, I pay dues to my state CPA. So there's that recurring, revenue coming in. And then obviously you've got a robust education side to the societies, conferences and seminars and CPE type things. So those are all, so it's not like you're going out looking for donors for the organization, but you're responsible for revenue growth. And I totally get that. AJ, we were talking about this before we actually started recording, but there's a difference in this world between a chapter and a society. Some state CPA organizations call themselves chapters. Some of them call them societies. Can you tell me what the difference is, and also just tell us what your relationship is nationally to the AICPA?
Sure. Sure. So all of the state CPA societies have a direct line to AICPA in terms of understanding what the priorities are for AICPA. But the state CPA societies operate independently. So, NJCPA is a 501c6. We have our own board. We look at what's important in the state of New Jersey, and I'm sure other state societies are doing the same thing. But where we can, where there's a potential for alignment on, the national level, looking at priorities that AICPA is also dealing with, then obviously we look to understand how we can all support, any efforts that way. But we do operate independently.
So AJ, I'm in Philadelphia, so I belong to the Pennsylvania Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Have you guys ever considered changing your name from Society to Institute? Because Institute does sound so much more academic and important and smart. Can we start that?
I am going to leave that one alone.
Okay. You're going to pass on that question. Fair enough. Okay. So, obviously you're dealing with all the CPAs that are in the state of New Jersey and dealing with New Jersey stuff. What's different about being a CPA in New Jersey than other states? What issues do you see facing your members that members in other states around the country may not be facing or might be unique to your members?
One of the things that, comes to mind, well, a couple of things. So obviously we're concerned about whatever comes through annually with our state budget. So we poll our members annually on the state budget. And that's obviously very unique to New Jersey.
Sure.
And we also support work for credit alternatives in New Jersey. So we have university partnerships between St. Peter's University and PwC, Seton Hall and Witham. And then most recently, Rider University announced a program this week where they will be partnering with Wilkin Gut and Plan out of New Jersey. So, we're one of the first states, if you will, to really pilot a work for credit program as an alternative to getting those 30 hours of CPE credit, but being able to do it through experiential learning.
Got it. Are there any specific industries in New Jersey that you think are unique to the state? And don't say waste management, okay? That's a Sopranos thing. But is there maybe gambling or pharmaceuticals or anything else that you see you would think more CPAs would be involved in the state than maybe elsewhere in the country?
I think you named two. So pharma is big and biotech, definitely huge industries here. casinos and gaming, definitely another, huge industry. And then there are, there's a focus this year on manufacturing, and there are a lot of infrastructure projects looking at various energy bills and things like that. So we definitely, I know that the governor also said that, he wanted New Jersey to be an innovation hub. So looking at technology and working with the largest, companies to be able to test whatever that looks like around innovation. And I think we're also unique because we do have capacity to build some of this physical space. And while we're also looking at various infrastructure and transit projects across the state.
Got it. Do you find being in the state, I only say this because I'm local, the society covers the entire state, and yet the state of New Jersey is unique in that there is a North, a Central, and a South Jersey, and South Jersey is like everybody in South Jersey is wearing Phillies and Eagles gear, and everybody north of Princeton is wearing, Giants and Yankees gear. Yeah. And people that are in the middle are still trying to figure out, where they're at. Do you find that kind of culture affecting the society as well?
No, not so much. I think that, you'll see a concentration of maybe larger firms, more northern New Jersey, and then you see like the whole gamut of, just the variety of firms. And then to our conversation earlier, there are the large companies, and everyone needs the services of their CPA, right? Sure. Sure. Regardless of what industry. So I think it's, I would say each area, South Jersey to North Jersey, I think there's some, differences, like just in terms of, thinking of being along the shore and, the diversity of like your current environment. And then obviously political leanings as well. So all of those things that may impact, just what you're doing, what you're thinking about simply based on your location. Right. But right. I think we're all, at the end of the day, I think we're all in it together when we think about New Jersey as a collective in terms of serving the profession.
So you're seeing these CPAs work along together, whether they're a Giants fan or an Eagles fan, they're still able to sort out their differences and work together. Is
yes.
That what you're telling me?
Thankfully
okay.
so.
I'll take you at your word, AJ.
Yes.
Let's talk about talent. Let's talk about recruiting. Okay. I've actually complained about this to other executive directors and CEOs of CPA Society. I'm very frustrated at the amount of credit hours that are needed when somebody graduates college to become a CPA, for me, it was like 80 hours. And I think now it's like 120 credits in Pennsylvania. I think in New Jersey as well. My son became a CPA, which automatically means we had to pay for an extra year in college. I'm just telling you, it's annoying, so for him to get the credit. So, and I also think more importantly, but putting aside my gripes, I think that has an impact on recruiting people into the profession. It's a big expense and an investment to make. So tell me what, the society is doing, and working along with national, to try and fix some of the recruiting challenges that this profession is having, trying to get younger talent involved. What do you got going on, and what can we expect to see?
So a couple of things. One is that NJCPA is really committed to addressing the pipeline challenges however possible. And last year, we convened a pipeline task force, and that included, various segments, if you will, of our membership. Just so we had, emerging leaders represented on the task force. We had educators on the task force, and members in various size firms, you name it. So that's a plus because we want to bring diversity of perspective to the table when thinking about these larger recommendations. So the recommendations that came out of the task force was to raise awareness of the accounting profession to high school students and help them to understand opportunities that are out there within the profession, but to also address the negative perceptions that, college students and recent grads may have about accounting. And so that's one thing. And then secondly is to look at the barriers to licensure. So whether that's, waiting for a long period of time to actually become licensed in your state after passing the exam. And I hear that, across the board, it's not just one state. So I think that if states made that a priority, then it would be something that we could see as a fundamental shift. But we're looking at that. And then we obviously have our members. So we're leveraging the insights of our members. We talked about different companies and industries being represented here in the state. So involving all of our key stakeholders, our members who could give us insights, right, on what they're dealing with as a firm, as a company, in academia, to ensure that we understand their challenges and build that into our recommendations. So where we're at today is that they shared the list of recommendations, and now in the spring, our board of trustees will look at approving these recommendations and providing any additional insights. And from there, we'll be able to prioritize, where we want to put our resources and where it makes sense to put our resources along this pipeline challenge, if you will, where we can have the most impact as a state society. I can also get into our pipeline advisory work group, which is what I consider an extension of the work of the task force. But I'll stop here if you have any questions.
Yeah, I'd like to actually hear about the pipeline advisory work group. But before we do, if the pipeline task force comes up with recommendations that would require changing some of the certification requirements, just for argument's sake, they reduce the number of hours required or something like that, right? The state has to give the license, right? I mean, it's a state licensing thing. So what do they do now? I mean, do they just go back to the state and be like, hey, we're changing the requirements, so therefore you, the state, should change the requirements as well? Or does that have to be a whole other process that the state has to go through?
It's a whole process.
Yeah, big surprise.
Yeah, it's a whole process, and it's a conversation. It seems that everyone has a task force. I know AICPA has a pipeline advisory group. I know that NASPA also has a group looking into this. And, if it were a simple fix, Gene, I think we would probably all, push that button. But there's so much at stake when we think about mobility and substantial equivalency and what it means to practice across state borders, right?
Yeah.
So there are just so many considerations. And I think that the reason why we see the proliferation of so many task forces and advisory groups is that we want to make sure that whatever comes out of this is aligned. So I can say with confidence that I think that our state society would consider all of those, activities and what is the larger goal. So, we have work for credit programs that have already been piloted, new programs coming up that will allow recent graduates, students to be able to work for credit through experiential learning. So that's something that is supported and our board continues to support. But the larger question of, the current 150 hours versus 120 or anything else, that's going to take some more.
Yeah, gotcha. Somebody needs to come up with just like an AI application and just to have it just do it for us. Would make things like that much easier. You would mention this advocacy committee as well. So give us a little bit about what they're up to.
Yeah, so we recently established a pipeline advocacy work group. One of the reasons for that is because we realized that at the state level, there are efforts that could be, looked into, examined to help the pipeline challenge. So we're literally turning every stone, if you will, to understand what are some of the challenges at the state level that would impact, a young student from maybe having exposure to the accounting profession. And so this work group consists of key stakeholders, educators at the high school level, educators at the college level as well, so that we could examine those types of things. And I'll give you an example. So STEM. AICPA wrote federal legislation that would designate accounting as a STEM subject on the federal level. And all of the state CPA societies, when I talk about alignment, we all supported that. Okay. So this advocacy work group allows us to dig deeper into STEM and see, what are the opportunities specific to New Jersey. So we're just getting started with that. We'll do the same thing in terms of looking at short-term opportunities, long-term opportunities, and where we could, allocate our resources. So I'm really excited about that because I think that knowing that there's no one single solution, I think it's really important that we do have this multi-stakeholder, approach to solving the problem and moving the needle forward in a positive way. Yeah.
And this is all designed to try and get younger people more involved in the profession, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. All right. Well, good luck with that because AJ, this younger generation, they just don't want to work like you and me. You know what I mean? That's the problem. I'm just kidding. This programs, they do sound great. And I wish you success with it because, and I know a lot of the state societies are trying to do the very same thing, and try and reinvigorate people into, understanding the opportunities, which I'm going to ask you about in a minute. But I wanted to just say a word that, being a CPA is not just about doing taxes. I mean, I've realized that. And I've met director of marketings at Fortune 500 companies that are CPAs because it's a data-driven, profession, and
yes.
People that run businesses, they go into sales, they go into technical degrees, they host podcasts, they're CPAs as well. It's,
yes.
The financial knowledge is important, really important and good. But it's a foundation for doing a lot of other stuff. And the more that message gets out to younger people, the more they should know that to be in a world of business. And the other thing I could say to you, AJ, is that, I've been a CPA for like 1,000 years now. I don't even practice accounting anymore. Like my firm doesn't do financial statements or tax returns, but I get the CPE every other year because,
right.
I'm proud of it and it's very credible. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
So having said that, let me ask you, what is your, if you were talking to not only just younger people starting out in the profession, but people that are already in the profession, what opportunities do you think there are in, going forward for CPAs? Like, where do you see, like, if you were starting up a CPA firm or you were a partner in a CPA firm and it's 2024, we're having this conversation, where do you think there are some, growth opportunities if you were in that world? I'm curious to see what you're saying.
Well, I would agree with you. I think that the options, the sky is the limit, honestly. I think that if I were speaking to a young person, and when I do speak to students, I like to remind them that whatever industry they may be interested in, there's a need for CPAs. So I'm told of countless stories of, being able to have impact, whether it's working with a startup, venture capital, in entertainment, gaming, all of those industries that we talked about, where there's still a need for CPAs. And not only that, accounting provides the language, right, of business that would be very helpful in any business endeavor, whether you want to aspire to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur or something in between. So I think that we have to bring the relevance of the profession to young people and help them to understand, and also to experience earlier what accounting could be in their lives and how they may be able to, change their lives and their community, right? As a CPA and simply being in the profession. So that's where I would go with the conversation.
I would agree. I think there are those opportunities out there. And listen, it's everybody that runs a business needs to be financially literate because it's math. And if even if you don't want to run a business, but you're applying for a job in the corporate world, having that CPA after your name, I mean, even if you're not applying for an accounting job, it carries just a level of knowledge and credibility that gets people's attention. So I wish you the best of luck getting word out there. Go ahead.
I will tell you something, Gene. So, when we looked at the research among college students, they still felt that the CPA was the gold standard, if you will, whether they intended to pursue it or not. And that has to do with if they think that it's too hard to attain, all of those things. So I think that students definitely need the mentoring and the help along the way to understand, yes, I can do this. While math may be a part of it, the other part of it is to be a strategic thinker, to be able to, be a trusted and strategic advisor to your clients in whatever capacity, whatever industry you're in, not just as a firm leader or someone coming up in a firm. And so that's why I say the opportunities are truly endless, right? You earn the license, you become a CPA. It's a gold standard. Like you said, it's respected. And so I think we just have to find ways to communicate the positive messages and the positive stories to encourage the young people to actually take a chance if they're uncertain of their own capabilities.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, AJ, we're out of time. You're going to do your summer conference at the Borgata again this summer?
Yeah. So feel free to join us.
Yes, whenever it is. I've spoken there a few times. It is a great conference for any of you guys that are watching or listening. It's at the Borgata. It's usually like in the June timeframe, and it's well worth the trip for any CPAs or people in the financial community that really want to get good content and education. I just think it's a great conference. So good to hear you're doing that. Aiysha Johnson, or AJ, is the CEO and Executive Director of the New Jersey Society of CPAs. AJ, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And everybody, you're watching this, the Paychex THRIVE podcast. If you are looking for more insights, some more knowledge, more advice to help you run your business, more information about not only just HR, but just overall business practices, sign up for our newsletter. Please visit us at paychex.com/thrive. It's paychex.com/thrive. You'll love our newsletter. It will really help you run your business. My name is Gene Marks. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Do you have a topic or a guest that you would like to hear on Thrive? Please let us know. Visit payx.me/Thrive topics and send us your ideas or matters of interest. Also, if your business is looking to simplify your HR, payroll, benefits, or insurance services, see how Paychex can help. Visit the resource hub at paychex.com/works. That's WORX. Paychex can help manage those complexities while you focus on all the ways you want your business to thrive. I'm your host, Gene Marks, and thanks for joining us. Till next time, take care.
This podcast is property of Paychex Incorporated 2024. All rights reserved.